All right, everybody, it's the Working Fans Podcast with the man they call Dave. And today we got a special guest. This guy, I'll tell you what, he's done a lot more than you probably know. He's a former WWE superstar, but he's been in Smoky Mountain for a little bit. He's been in ECW for a little bit. He's been basically everywhere. Former WWE Tag Team Champion, former member of Right to Censor, Truth Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, Bull Buchanan. Thank you for doing the show, man.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for doing this. I was just thinking, like, when I started doing my research on you, it's just so funny because I grew up watching, for a long time, even before the Attitude Era, but I forget, like, you've been everywhere. You were, like, really kind of in the background of so much stuff.
Yes, my son, Brooks Jensen, calls me the Forrest Gump of wrestling because I was there kind of peeking around the corner at all these big events, the screw job and all this stuff. So, yeah, he calls me the Forrest Gump of wrestling.
It's very, I can see that because, I mean, you were part of the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, and now your son's in NXT, so it's wild. Usually we ask this question, and I'm kind of curious because you have been in wrestling for so long. What got you into wrestling? Like, what got you, like, who were you a fan of? Who introduced you to wrestling?
I stumbled on it on TV. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, but, I was a little kid. I was 7 or 8 years old. And I found a UHF channel that had wrestling on it. And I figured out how to get back to it. And it was channel 17. It was Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think it probably had to be around 77. And I started watching it, and I just got so, thrilled with it. And I got to, go, when I went back to school, I started, because I'd heard people talk about something, Dick Slater was a big name at that time around here.
Yeah.
I'd heard people talk about it, but I didn't really know what they were talking about. And so I went back to school, and I found out that there was this little kind of, like you said, it's a niche, there was this little kind of crew of people that knew. And so we all kind of got together, and, we would talk about wrestling when we got back, because you figured out pretty quick that, some of the people you'd say, hey, do you know who Tommy Wildfire Rich? Say, oh God, you don't watch that shit, do you? And so, we would get in our little groups and talk about it. But I fell in love with it. I thought, what a great way to make a living. I remember seeing a video of Tommy Rich. I can't remember if it was actually from Memphis or if it was, Georgia Championship did it. But it was like him riding around with Trans Am with tops. And I've told him this before too. Riding around in Trans Am with the tops out, showing clips of, a music video, back when they was, first getting started. And I thought, what a great way to make a living, man. And so, yeah, and I just continued, Tommy Rich wrestling too. The Georgia Championship guys. And then I figured out, I got a little more tech savvy, and I figured out how to turn the antenna. And then I started picking up World Class. So then I got in, and I already kind of been a fan of the Freebirds out in Georgia. And I started watching World Class and got into those guys, the Von Erichs. I loved the whole thing. The Freebirds, of course. And I just continued to be a fan. And yeah, that's how I kind of got into it.
That's awesome, man. I mean, and then you're going to end up working with a lot of these different people.
And actually, me and Tommy rode together a bunch. When I first got started, especially around here in Georgia, if you could get Tommy Rich on the card, it was guaranteed, 100 to, how many more people. Right. And he could stay booked a lot around here. So I ran into him quick, and when, he kind of, took a liking to me, and we started traveling together in Smoky Mountain, and we continued to travel together out in Memphis. Well, I had just bought, it was like an 87 Firebird, but it had T-tops in it. And I don't know if he remembers it or not, but we were driving down the road one day, and I turned around to him and I said, you know what? I said, I dreamed about this my whole life. He looked at me like I was an idiot and just kind of shrugged it off, but yeah, I was a huge fan.
That's awesome, man. So, how did you begin your training? Who did you break in with?
A guy named his working name was Olin James. His name was James Hammonds. there was a group of guys around here that had been trained by Ted Allen. Ted Allen trained Big Boss Man and Arn Anderson, and I think Scotty, he was in WCW. But he trained, yeah. He trained a lot of guys, and they had been trained by him, and they were running shows here in my hometown, and I just took a chance when I was working at a furniture. I just had got out of college, and I was working at a furniture store, and they were right across the street. So I just took a chance and walked over there and walked in, and actually some guys I knew from town were in there, which that was really really cool because honestly, at that time, I knew that wrestling, wasn't totally on the up and up, but I didn't know how much of it was dang. So I was walking in there kind of like, I might get my ass beat just walking in here like this. I mean, they broke Hogan's leg. I know that was, a little earlier, but I mean, the business was still protected back then. So there were some guys in there I knew from town. And so, they invited me in, got me in the ring, and Olin James comes walking in. This dude's big, like my size, probably weighed a little more, big barrel chested guy. And, I could tell that he, wasn't too happy with him just, had walking me through the door like that. And, but I talked to him earlier. Somebody told us who to talk to, and I talked to him, and he was totally honest with me. He said, well, you probably ain't gonna make no money and you're probably gonna get hurt. And he said, but there's always a chance that you could make it. So I didn't go into it with any illusions. I was happy just to be in the business. That's what I always wanted to do. If I could have made $500 a week, that was my tipping point till I quit my regular job, and just be a wrestler. So, but yeah, Olin John, yeah, he got in the ring, and I remember the first thing he pulled his shirt open. He used to have his work shirt on. He pulled it open and, stuck his chest out. He said, chop me. And I'd seen it a million times, but I mean, hell, I ain't really ever tried to do it. So I did a really bad week, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't want to hit him too hard either. I don't know. So yeah, he turned me around. He said, no, that ain't how you do it. And he lit me up. And nobody ever had to tell me again, how to do it. But he was actually, he was really big. I think one of the guys that he liked a lot at the time was William Regal. So he did a lot of chain wrestling, a lot of stuff like that. And of course, that's where I learned it from. And years later, it's still it amazes me, how much he showed me and how much it all still means something.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, guys that are borrowed from Regal and trained Iron Anderson, like you said, and I mean that's a great start right there. And then, how long before you end up in Smoky Mountain?
I just, like everybody else does, I just branched out. I started working for James at their shows, here at the local flea market. And next thing I know, I was in Boaz, Alabama, working for Mickey Henry. And then I was all over Alabama. I met the Armstrongs. Bob Armstrong really, took me under his wing and made me humongous, a Lord Humongous. I did that over there in Alabama for him, and actually made the, at that point, the most money I'd made in the business. Just working with him. And I got on TV in Atlanta, Channel 36, I believe it was at the time. Joe Pedicino had a show, and it was North Georgia Wrestling. We had a late time slot, but it had kind of a little cult following around Georgia. And it was legit TV. We were on a block of wrestling with Smoky Mountain and Memphis at that time. Earlier, when I was a teenager during the 80s, it was a 9-10 hour block. It would start at 7 o'clock on Saturday nights as peak and would go to 2 o'clock in the morning. And they would show everything. They would show stuff from Japan, from Puerto Rico. If there was wrestling on the planet, they'd show it at some point. And it had dwindled down to just a 3 hour block, but it was Smoky Mountain. And Cornette would come down and run Cobb County Civic Center. And he already had the affiliation with WWE. So he could bring, guys like Luger come down. Randy came down one time. Well, since we were in Georgia, we were in Georgia, there in Atlanta, where the station was and where he was trying to get to. We helped promote the show for him, so he gave us North Georgia a match every time he came to Cobb County Civic Center. That's how New Jack and Mustafa got noticed. Uh, we were working together I got to be friends with them down there in Georgia. We were working together, and they were on the North Georgia circuit for a little while, and that's how they got to Smoky Mountain. So, of course, when they got up there, they said, "Hey, there's a dude down here you need to take a look at." And and the contacts, like everything else in this business, just the networking and the contacts of people I'd run across. Bob Armstrong was up. All the Armstrong boys were up there. I'd worked with all of them at that point. And let's see, Ricky and Robert, I'd run across them out on the east. They were up there. So I had a lot of guys going to Cornette. I remember him telling me, when I finally got on there, he was going to come out there and watch. And so, we had the match, and I did everything I could possibly pull out at that point. I did the leg drop off the top, and Cornette saw it. And I think it, got over with him because, of course, Bobby Eaton, has the leg drop and knee drop off the top. So he told me, I went back and, he said, "Hey, man, I watched it, man." And he specifically, man, that leg drop was something else. He said, "I don't really have a spot for you right now, but I keep you in mind." And so I left there and actually went down to Puerto Rico with Ron Starr was another guy that helped me in the business. Really took a liking to me, took me under his wing. Ron Starr was he was the old school enforcer guy at that time around Georgia in the early 90s. I went with him a few times when people would call him to, come in and straighten somebody out. He was one of those guys, and he liked me, and he took me to Puerto Rico. But I got back, and Cornette called me and says, "Hey, man, I got you a spot." And that was he laid the Punisher, the bodyguard thing out to me, which I was ecstatic, to actually, be a part of his thing. And I think there when everybody got together, it was a couple of weeks, but it wound up being me and Tommy, of course. That's where we're riding together. Me, Tommy, Terry Gordy, which was one of the guys I watched growing up, and a lot of my style I tried to take from Gordy. A lot of stuff I do and the way I do it. There was a few guys, but Gordy, Magnum TA was another one. I was really big on him. But I tried to take a lot from Gordy. I liked the way he worked, the way he moved. So getting to work with him was great. But yeah, it was. That's how I got there.
That's awesome, man. And just get back to the wrestling in a second, but one thing I've noticed is that as you're telling us, and even talking to you, you're a very well-mannered person, and I think that must play such a big part in this, because obviously you got to work hard and you got to still perform. But at the end of the day, I think if you're like someone said once in a while, if you show up and you have a good attitude, that really helps with a big portion of what we do in life.
Oh yeah. I looked at every day in this business as a blessing. I never took it for granted, when it was going to end, and that I had a spot or that I was guaranteed to, there no guarantees. And I just, there was nothing else I really wanted to do. There was things that I was interested in outside of wrestling, but as far as, what I wanted to do for a living, and I just didn't take no for an answer. I figured out a way. I just kept digging, and I've told guys this for years, and it's funny when people come back and tell me, "Hey, you told me that a long time ago." I tell them the same thing, man. It's just when you walk in a room, there's one person and they're working harder than everybody else. Whatever's going on, there's always 4 or 5 people in there just kind of messing around. There's a few people over in the corner talking. There's one person over there working. If you outwork them, you shouldn't have any problems getting where you want to go in life, because it's just about putting your head down and going to work. This business doesn't owe anybody anything. And I was glad that for every day that I had in it. I wish I had some more, but at some point you just gotta, call it a ball game.
You went from Smoky Mountain and you had a very brief run, I want to say, in ECW. Um, what what a change I feel like though in that time period from like the Mountain area and now you're with ECW. What was that like?
Yes. So ECW was the hot thing. I mean, at that time, as everybody knows. And when Smoky Mountain shut down, Cornette told me he said just keep working, and I'll get you a spot or a tryout or something. And so I did. I just kept working around the Carolinas, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and a friend I had made, Billy Black, who he was a tag team with Joel Deaton over in Japan for All Japan, and Paulie wanted to bring him in, but I think Joel was tied up or something. So uh, Billy called me and said, "Hey, you want to go to ECW?" And God, yeah, of course I do, because Smoky Mountain is shut down. Uh, Smoky Mountain was exactly what I thought wrestling should be, and what I had hoped it would be. Um, but at the same time, ECW, that was the kind of the hot thing that, and I'm 24, 25, something like that, man. I don't feel any pain. I'm ready to go. So we go up there, and I think we did a house show, and then we did the TV at the ECW arena.
Yeah.
And I believe me and Billy worked Ian Rotten in a handicap match. Somebody didn't show up or something, and we worked him in a handicap match. And they came to us and talked to us, and we worked the eliminators the next night for one of the TVs. And I think it was the night that New Jack Mustafa kind of turned face. I believe it was that same night. But it was great, man. The atmosphere was unbelievable. It was everything that everybody always talks about how it being. It was everything and then some. Uh, I thought we had a real good match with the Eliminators. I pulled out every friggin' athletic move I could do. Um, and Paulie wanted us to come back, but Cornette had contacted me when I got home and said I had a contract in the mail.
Oh.
And but I had to think about it for a minute, which kind of even surprised me. I mean, I got this envelope with WW at that time WWF logo on it, and inside there's a legitimate contract for legitimate money. You're gonna when you sign it, you're gonna get paid. You're not gonna and but at the same time, man, I, I I'm thinking that if I go to ECW, I can make a name for myself there, and then come over here. But what I found out later on was, Vince likes making his own stars.
Right.
And for a long time he had to take stars from that were already stars somewhere else and recreate them, in something else. But by that time, there were enough of us young guys coming along that, we weren't stars anywhere. We were working every night, but we wasn't stars. You wasn't stars until you got there or, WCW or something like that. But even with Smoky Mountain, there was a large chunk of the country in an even bigger world that had never seen me before. Same thing with ECW. As popular as it was, there was a lot of wrestling fans that had never seen it before. WCW and WWE, they had the corner on the market at that time. But
Did you do a brief? Did you do a TV taping at WCW too?
no, I never worked for WCW, and it's amazing because, in all transparency, growing up, and I don't want to say I wasn't a fan because I was a fan of wrestling, whatever.
Sure.
It was. And there was a lot. There was a lot of good stuff they did too, but WWF was kind of down on my list. I was a world champion. I was a WCW guy.
Yeah.
And I was a the Mid South, like that. And so I figured I would go to WCW. And I got in the business and I started making contacts, like I said, and I called down to school one time and I talked to Jody Hamilton. And I told him this years later and he laughed. Jody picked up the phone and said, introduce yourself. And of course, I knew who he was. So Mr. Hamilton, I was wondering how, I'd go about getting a tryout. He said, well, he's come down to school. It was like $250. And to be honest with you, I didn't have $250 at times. So I thanked him and I said, well, and I said, well, I need to round up $250. But at the same time, I was kind of like, well, I don't know about paying for a tryout. Hell, I think I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And I did. And, it worked out the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you get to have a little bit of a rub with Paul Heyman. You obviously had a lot more time with Jim Cornette and developed that relationship with Cornette. And now here we are, not too long in the business, and you're working for WWF with Vince McMahon. Is there a part of you that's thinking like, this is nuts? Like, I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People say that I love people and that say that fame doesn't change you. Fame absolutely changes you. It's just how much it changes you. I went from it was a pretty fast ride, and it's hard not to it's hard for your ego not to inflate some. But I always tried to keep it in check. My wife did a good job at that. Letting me know that I wasn't anybody special. But yeah, man, it was like a quick. And be honest with you, looking back at it and being honest, man, I was still green, of course.
Right.
When I got to WWE, I wonder sometimes. Now, I got better, I think, as I went along. But man, I think sometimes if I'd went to Japan before I went to WWE, it would have been a whole different, animal.
Yeah, I could see that, and I would say too, as just a fan too, as just talking to you too, like I really feel like in another era and another time, like those territory days, like that would have been more your speed. I think,
Yeah.
Vince, from everything we have heard, he was not necessarily a big fan of Southern accents. Wouldn't probably give people a talk, but territory days, you can go cut a Southern fired up wrestling promo and get over and catch on.
Yeah, it's funny too. I graduated in 1986, and I think it was 1987. I was in my second semester at college, and I found out my aunt knew a guy that worked in the old Georgia Championship Wrestling era. If any of the fans remember, a guy named Snake Brown. He had really wild, crazy looking hair. He was almost a bruiser. He wasn't quite as big as Brody. He was real tall. But, he worked around here. He was an underneath guy, but, he was a big guy. So, they'd somewhat take care of him. But she knew him. She went to high school with him. And I said, God, you think he would train me? And I had her go ask him. And she came back and she said, yeah, he said he'll train you. And the same day, but I had planned not to go back to college. I had I went to LaGrange College down here, right out of high school. I played basketball, and I went to them. And first year of college, homesick, and so so here's summer, and I said, well, I'm not going to go back. I'm just going to get a job, figure out how I'm getting wrestling. And one of my coaches called, and he'd moved to another college. He invited me to come down. I went down. I really liked the place, and I wound up staying and playing ball for another few years. But yeah, I think about sometimes, man, if I could got in back then, that's maybe wrong call on my part. But then again,
it didn't work out bad though. I mean,
it didn't work out bad. And, me being 18 years old, I don't know if I could have handled, because the wrestling bit, even when I first started, when I got into it and when I was in it, it was a little bit of the Wild West. Yeah, I don't know if I could handle that 18, 19 years old.
Sure. Different mentality. We all mature, and life experience helps us grow. And right, I'm sure you were a different person at 18.
Yeah. I would have been very easily influenced at 18. Probably some stuff I didn't need to do.
Yeah.
So I might have lived longer the way I went. So
yeah, that's good. Right. So you're in the Truth Commission in WWF. One question before we move on from that. What was it like working with Kurgan and Don Callis, who was Cyrus, I believe, at the time? And there was another Sniper.
Yeah. Luke Poirier, yes.
Yeah.
And there was another one a lot of people don't know about.
Right.
Mike Halleck, a Mantar, just died recently. God rest his soul. He was one of the original truth. They contacted us. I'd been under contract with them for about a year. I'd already been down to Memphis and worked down there, and I was home for a minute, and they called us and they got us all up there and explained it to us. And we met the commandant, the kind of one of the authors. Him and Bret Hart worked together in South Africa on a Sinbad thing, and they talked about it. And Bret brought it back to Vince. Vince liked it, of course. Three big guys, dressed in fatigues and army stuff. That was right in Vince's wheelhouse. So he liked it, and Kurgan and Luke. Well, originally Kurgan and I think it was just Kurgan at that time, had been to Brett's school out there, the dungeon. He'd worked a little bit up there. So he knew Brett. So Brett knew him. So, hey, let's bring this guy in. And then Owen had met Mike Mantar over in Germany. And he told, he said, hey, this guy's not doing anything right now. Why don't you bring? So they brought him in. And then from what I understand, they were just looking at some photos and mine was in there. And they said, and I had the crew cut at the time. And they said, what hell, he looks like an army guy. So there I am. And we went up there for like a week or two and learned how to Robin, the original commandant, was actually a former South African soldier. Excuse me. So he taught us how to march and everything and salute and the whole, and we worked out a couple of tag moves, and boom, we hit Memphis, and we worked down there for a while, and we got ready to get called up, and I don't know. They never called Mike up. He stayed down there in Memphis, and then about a week after we got up there, Luke did a tryout match because he still had long hair. Luke Poirier was Rambo in it was Otto Wance's
CWA, right?
Germany. Yes, CWA. Yeah. Yes, he was Rambo. Oh. So he had he was already tuned up. He'd been, I think he'd actually been up there one time before to New York, but he'd been working with all those guys. All the guys that were working in New York had went through Germany at some point. Road Warriors, all of them. They had went through Germany, and Luke always took care of them. So when he got up there, that gave us a really in. We were automatic. I had met Road Warriors down here on the Indy some, but not enough to know them. But with them knowing him, man, we got to in with everybody. So as far as like fitting in and everything, we were great. But yeah, we were and Robin, the original commandant, had some visa trouble or something, and they let him go. And then they brought Don in, and we took it in a different direction, which I think I think the direction we were going would actually have some legs under it if they kept going with it, because we were doing the whole David Koresh kind of thing, the whole cult kind of thing, and we were actually, I think, you have to ask Don because he was the one telling us about it. I don't remember if he pitched the ideal or if they came up with the ideal or if it was just floated around about us. We were down in I think we were down in Waco. We were in Amarillo or Waco. I think we were in Waco, and there was maybe some talk going around about us actually going out to where the whole David Koresh thing happened. Wow. And filming a vignette, but somebody put the brakes on because it was still kind of recent at that time. It hadn't been that long. Yeah. So I guess that somebody put the brakes on it. Probably
different time, man. They were trying all kinds of things back then, huh?
Yeah, and then, then they had the thing where they lowered Don down from the ceiling in the pulpit thing. That was the hardest match I've ever had in my life, and it had nothing to do with I think it was Steve Blackman. It had nothing to do with Steve. It was easy with him, but the crowd was just totally not into it. They're sitting there watching Don come down, and nobody's watching the match. And we're in there. I did a frog splash. We're in there flying around, and nobody is watching it, and nobody's reacting to it. It's dead silent in the arena.
Oh man, yeah. I remember that kind of being like the case. I remember there was a lot of stuff that was quiet, and It's hard
Yeah.
to shine in that time period though, when you got Austin and Rock and everybody just crushing this crowd. They're all these huge stars right now.
Well, that was kind of the transition because Vince, like I said, our gimmick was right in his wheelhouse. Three big guys, foreigners, army guys. I mean, that's just the sort of gimmicks and characters that Vince liked. But everything was transitioning. Austin had already kind of started his thing, and then Rocky is morphing into what he was turning into. And the line was getting so blurred. Now the stuff that used to, somewhat get over, was people were just like, okay, three army got really okay. And you're really from South Africa. Once I opened my mouth, everybody knew that, at least
Exactly.
I wasn't from South Africa. Maybe
Yeah.
South Alabama, not South Africa.
I mean, I have to say, I do remember. I thought that when you got in the right to censor, that gimmick was more. That was a great heel team gimmick. I thought for that time period
Oh
because it
yeah.
was so anti with everything that the crowd loved.
Yes, that was exactly what people were wanting, that kind of stuff at that time. Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many. We got a ton of heat.
Mm.
I don't think anybody that was there, or even if you watch stuff back, can deny we had a ton of heat. But there were a lot of people that liked us. There was always people that would come to Madison Square Garden dressed as, and one dude would come in with the bald skin cap on, dressed like me. Uh, there was a lot of people that, especially in the Northeast, Philly, of course,
Right.
uh, they're always kind of anti-establishment, but
Yeah.
but yeah, we had a little bit. They actually made some T-shirts of the right censor symbol on the front of it. I want to say they made like 2,500 of them, and it's never made any more. And hell, we probably got you know 4 or 5 of them ourselves each. So,
Wow.
but
Uh,
yeah.
Now, how did I think that would be a big moment for you, but how did everybody else in the group feel? Like Val and Godfather, Steve Ivory. I'm assuming some of these guys were probably like, I was doing a good thing over here.
Yeah. So me and Stevie had met, and we got to be friends. And um, he told me that they were putting the Godfather in it, and I said, "Have they told him that?" Because I knew Charles at that point. We got to be a lot better friends, but we were already, we knew each other, we were friends. Um, and I remember we were standing once again, right place at the wrong time. Uh, Me and Stevie were standing, looking around the corner. And I remember watching Vince explaining to Charles, that they were putting him in the right sensor, and I could tell, by his hand movements that he wasn't happy. So, but you got to think, man, this guy was moving so much merchandise at the time. I mean, he would have been in the top 5, and you got to think. I'm sorry, my phone's moving around. That's including Steve Austin. That's including The Rock.
Right.
Mick Foley. He was moving a ton of merchandise, and Val too. And plus just the fact. I mean, you going out there every night having fun, and
Yeah.
and then now you're you know Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
Biggest buzzkill in the world. For me, it was not a problem because I'd always been a heel. I'd been a heel. I wouldn't have known how to not be a heel. For me, it was just, I was transitioning from being a jerk, in a black suit to a jerk in a white shirt. For Godfather, it was totally, killing off the gimmick. And Val too. Now, Ivory, I don't know whether she liked it or not, but man, she really, well, everybody did. I mean, no, whether they wanted to be there or not, everybody, uh, there was never a night that Val went out there and took a night off, or Godfather or I, none of us. We wasn't going out there taking nights off. We were going out there working hard. But and trying everything we could do to get it over. Any ideas we could come up with, everybody was pushing. But Ivory jumped in with both feet. I mean, she really embraced it. She she made herself look more plain. You know, Ivory was a very beautiful woman. She made herself look plain for the gimmick. You know, she didn't put on much makeup. You know, she pulled her hair way back, and you know, she'd wear the long, obnoxious skirt. You know,
She
sometimes,
embraced it.
yeah,
Right did.
yeah. You know, so for me and Stevie, at least, it was kind of like, okay, no, we'd done stuff. You know, the thing with Boss Man, you know, I was
Oh, right.
really disappointed about that because I figured, you know, man, we're going to be a tag team till the day we die. You know, I don't know why I would think that in the wrestling business, but I just thought we gelled so good. We were friends outside the business. You know, we hung out with each other. Our kids, you know, played with each other, and so I was really disappointed about that. But you know, I think me and Stevie really saw this as like, okay, this is our chance. You know, let's get this thing over. Let's really, you know, go out here and, you know, and yeah. So,
You,
but yeah, I mean, they put tag belts on us there for
yeah.
a minute, which was cool because at that point, uh, I think Ray had to have a knee surgery or something. He had to go off the road for a while, so I'd been riding with him, and then I just kind of hopped around with Ron and John, and you know, guys, different, you know, rode with them a lot. But Michael Hayes come up to me one day, and I always trust his advice. I knew him before I got up there, you know. I'd met him on the Indies once again down here in the South. Uh, he said, you know, it's always been my opinion that you're a better tag team when you ride together. I said, okay, you know, I approached Godfather and said, hey, you know what? You guys, I'm kind of out of ride right now, and of course he was like, no, man, jump in. He was riding with Teddy Long at the time, so man, we had a blast. It was fun. We always had, you know, the car rides for me were fun anyway. Uh, we just enjoyed, you know, listen to music and ride down the roads and talk. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, and it made a couple of new friends too.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
like you said, you got, you know, being a fan all your life, you get a chance to at least wear tag team gold in WWE.
yeah.
And you even, I think, did a WrestleMania. Were you on WrestleMania 17?
You know, I actually did 3 WrestleManias.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I'm not good with numbers. I did the one where Sean dropped the belt to Austin, Mike Tyson.
Oh,
We
14. Boston.
yes, we were in
Battle Royal?
the Battle Royal. Yes, the tag
Yeah.
team Battle Royal. Yes, to get
I was
Joe
there.
get
That's
to
awesome.
bring Joe and Mike back in. But hey, you know, we were glad to be there. You know, it got a good payoff, and it was WrestleMania. And then I think I skipped the next one, and then I was in 2000, I think, with me and Ray against D'Lo and Godfather. And then I was in Houston, the RTC one. So yeah.
That's great. I mean, those are moments, right? I mean, you're a part of the
Oh yeah, yeah.
WrestleMania. Yeah.
Oh, the Astrodome was, you know, growing up, especially here in the South. You know, the Astrodome was at the time when I was a kid growing up was the biggest arena in anywhere. I think. You know, I think at the time it was still the biggest arena in the United States. So to get to, you know, do a WrestleMania there, man, that thing's huge.
Now, you know, you had a great career in the right to censor, and then before you kind of leave WWE, you have one more run. You get
Yeah,
to be with a young man named John Cena, B Square. I don't think
yeah,
necessarily was your thing, but you had fun. It looked like.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And also, what are your thoughts about John Cena at this time? Because he ends up blowing up, obviously.
Um, we'd met out on the West Coast when we go out there, and he would do dark matches. And then he came back. He came to OVW, and I happened to be down there at the time when him and Batista and Randy and Brock and Shelton and all those guys were down there. We were off the road at that time, so I was down there, and I met him down, and I just heard him on the mic, and I said, you know, he's got it, you know, and of course the look. I mean, you know, a guy that looks like that and can talk. Uh, so I knew once he got up there and once they kind of figured out, you know, which way to go with him, uh, you know, that's the bit the this wrestling business is kind of like one of those things you order at 2 o'clock in the morning. One of those basically get rich schemes, learn how to make money. And, it sounds like it's real easy but there's a trick to it. And, that's knowing how to promote yourself. Um, that's knowing how to, get yourself out there. And, those guys, down in OVW, they were getting ring time every day, for 2-3 hours a day, and then going, and Cornette kept them booked in uh, as many house shows around there as he could. So, yeah, I knew once they got a load of him and figured out which way they wanted to go with him, that he'd be fine. Um, and they did. And I was actually back up there at the time when I think when they got back from Europe, I guess, and he rapped for them, and he just started it. And I had been back up there for a little while. I'd been on the road. I was doing dart matches, and I was doing all the house shows, which was great. And they just came to me one night and said, "Hey, you going out with Cena tonight?" So I knew what he was doing, and he came to me and told me what he knew. And I think Paul Heyman was the booker at the time. He was the head writer, and we had, of course, when we were working out there for him, as short as it was, uh, I had went back to a few of the ECW shows, especially when they're around here. And, he was always glad to have me there, and, always told me, if something happens, come over here and I'll give you a job. So once he got over there, and he gave me some pretty good advice. There was a point there toward the Truth Commission, right there before we were called up. There was a point there where we weren't sure if we were getting called up or not, and I had to look at my options. And Paul gave me some, I called Paul and I said, "Hey, look, if something happens here, and he gave me some really good. I'm not going to say what it was, but he gave me some really good kind of inside knowledge advice, and it worked out for me. So I had a really good relationship with Paul. Um, and we sat down and talked about several things. He had some ideas, and so he came up with the B2 thing. But I remember I wasn't sure which way they wanted to go with it, so I kind of took it into my own hands. And me and Shelton Benjamin were riding together at the time, so we took off. And this was the same day. Like, they told me, "Hey, you going out with him tonight?" And I said, "Okay." And we were on our way to the mall, and I said, "I'm going in a different direction with this." So I went out and got the Rough Ride. And at the time, I think it was that loop that me and Shelton were out on, because we'd meet up at the airport and we'd ride together the whole loop and go home, get back together on the road. And I had just bought the new Eminem CD at the time.
Yeah.
I just bought it, and we were listening to it, and I said, "That's it." I said, "Slim Shady, Eminem." So we went in the mall. Went shopping. We bought all the get up, and I walked out that night with it. I mean, I don't know. At that point, I had been. Vince always saw me as, from what I understand, from what he told me and from what other people told me, Vince always saw me as a killer. I was 6'6", 6'7", close to 300 pounds. I mean, of course, bald head, of course he's going to see me as a killer. I just wanted to try something else. And so we did. We had fun with it. I mean, I did. I think he did too. We had a good time with it. It was short lived, but what time we did, I mean, I think it started getting over a little bit. Well, he got over with it, of course,
Sure.
but I think the whole sidekick thing was entertaining.
Yeah, no, it was very good. I always enjoyed that. Good memories of that. Now I'm gonna give you a few more questions. But you left WWE and then you ended up in Japan, right, for a little while,
Yes.
All Japan and Noah.
Yes.
And how was that?
Uh, Great. Like I said, if I went to Japan before I went to WWF, I don't know. Well, I would have been better if I'd went, but I don't know if I would ever went. I love Japan. Me and D'Lo went over there together, and of course, he's a big fan of the culture and everything going in. So, I loved it. The lifestyle, the style of the wrestling I like. The strong style. I've always I started watching like I said, Superstars Wrestling, on Saturday night in Atlanta, Georgia. You're gonna get a match or two from All Japan or New Japan. So I was familiar with it, and then when the tape traders kind of started taking off there toward the late '80s, I kind of started getting in on that in the early '90s. So I was pretty boned up on my Japanese wrestling, and it had always been my plan, because for every beginning there's an end. It's got to end sometime. Hopefully you go as long as you can, but I said if whenever I finish up here, I'm going to Japan, and yeah, I got to, and I loved it. We went to All Japan first. We did a thing called ROD. Taka Michinoku he was the figurehead leader, but he was actually kind of the leader too. He took care of us, you know, and we got to know him in New York in WWE. So it was me, and it was Umaga, it was D'Lo, and Taokea, Monikea Mossman, who was All Japan original. He was Hawaiian, but he trained over in the dojo, so he was already over there. And they brought us in and pushed us really hard. We worked with Muda. Our first tour, me and D'Lo worked with Muda in the finals of the tag league tournament. We did really good business over there for them, and they were they were kind of on their heels. This wasn't long after, just a few years after Misawa, took everything but the kitchen sink and took off. So Muda had just came in and took over, and I think him and Taka had a pretty good relationship. So I think Taka said, "Hey, or Muda told Taka, hey, go find me some New York guys." And I think I think John Laurinaitis, John Laurinaitis was over talent relations. When I first got there, J.J. Dillon was over talent relations. That's how long ago it was. But for the most time it was Jr. But John Laurinaitis had took over talent relations, and when he called me and told me, said, "Hey, they're not going to renew your contract." And I said, well, I kind of had felt it coming. But he told me he'd go over there, and he said, "I'm going over to Japan, so I'll say something to Muda." And apparently he did. So that got us over there pretty quick. I think it was maybe 6 months after I left New York. I was over there. I left New York in January, February, and I was over there by September. So yeah, and then we plugged along for a few years, and then Umaga or Eki went back. Umaga went back to 85, went back to New York and did the Umaga. And then me and D'Lo left, I want to say in 2006, and went over to Noah. And then we had a pretty good run over there. We got tag belts over there, got a little short run with tag belts over there. And man, at that time, you're talking 2006, 2007, 2008, 2005 from about 2008. One of the best rosters, one of the best pro wrestling rosters on the planet. When you include the ROH guys, because at that time Noah had the working relationship with ROH. Nigel McGuinness,
right.
Brian Danielson, Eddie Edwards, Davey Richards, Doug Williams. Everybody that worked, Samoa Joe, everybody that worked, almost everybody, the Briscoes, everybody that worked for ROH came through Noah. They would do tours over there. So, man, we would go out and watch, Eddie Edwards and, Davey Richards. They'd be first match, and they'd go out there and tear the house down, for 10 minutes. We'd go out there and watch that every night, and then, you tag them. And at the time, they wasn't the bigger names that they would become. They were just kind of getting started too. So it was a lot of fun to be there and especially watch those guys and see what they went on to do. There was so much talent on that, and of course all the Noah talent, Kobashi, even though, at that time they were all getting older, Kobashi, Masawa, Ogawa, all those guys, Jun Akiyama,
Right. Wow.
And and then you got like Kensuke Sasaki. He was a regular over there. Yeah, I mean, you talking about five-star matches from the ground up at that time. So it was an honor and a pleasure to get to go, especially to do it with me and D'Lo. Been friends since we met in Smoky Mountain. And our careers just kind of paralleled each other. He got there, and then I got there, and then you know, so yeah, it was fun to do it, and then still friends to this day. He was my partner at my retirement match in 2014.
That's awesome. Now, we started off this journey before we talk about what you're up to and promoting, but one of the things you said was your son, Brooks Jensen, called you the Forrest Gump. Now,
Yeah.
I believe you got the team with your son once, right? You did do a match together?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, more than once.
Okay.
So, yeah, I had a real nice – I went to work for the sheriff's department. They threw me a real nice retirement thing. And I planned on staying retired, as everybody does, of course. But I always knew that if one of them or both of them, or my two girls were already older, and they kind of tried it. They got in the ring and bumped a few times. Didn't really take with them. So but I knew if either one of them ever wanted to do it, that I was going to at least tag with them one time. Well, I did. And then it turned into 2 times, and then 3 times, and we wound up doing like a whole tour of the state of Georgia. We worked in just about every, and there's a lot of good promotions down here too. Southern Fried, Southern Honor. We worked for all those, and wound up just doing like a big tour. And it wound up, we wound up with some tag belts down in, I think it was Southern. Yeah, it was Southern Fried. Yeah, worked down there, and I took a bump and had to lay there for a minute and stare. And it took me about 2 years to recover from it. I say that jokingly. I joke with him all the time. I tell him, you finally finished me off after all those years. But no, it was a blast. We had a good time. It was, of course, fun. And now my youngest son, Zach Buchanan, is he's got about a year under his belt. He's graduating actually Monday. Tremendous amateur wrestler, great football player, and he plans on doing it. So, and he's, with wrestling season and football seasons kind of interrupted. He hit it pretty hard last spring and last summer, and then he had to take off through the fall and winter with the high school sports. But he's back at it, and so I'll be looking for big things from him too.
Must be cool. He's on the rise, and your other son is in NXT, and getting to train with people like Shawn Michaels, William Regal down there. That's got to be cool. These
Yeah, real cool, real cool.
Well, so it's been a hell of a journey. I guess. What are you up to right now?
I still work for the sheriff's department. I kind of did a tour over there. I started in jail and went to patrol, and then I was in investigations for a while. And now I'm working at the courthouse 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So still there. But I'm also, me and a friend of mine, a guy named Tom Araquazo, he's got a station on Facebook app and station WGTV here in West Georgia, the area we live in. It covers all the high school sports in the area, and he's a big wrestling fan. And he approached me a few months ago, and so we sat down and talked about it and started a promotion. We haven't run yet. Our first show's June 8th. It's Bullpen Pro Wrestling. I got a bunch of young guys, and I got a bunch of veterans coming in. I got David Young and Adam Jacobs coming in. Michael Judas. A lot of people remember him from TNA. I think he was Murphy in TNA. And I got a bunch of my young guys. Got a couple of my trainees. I got a training school too. We've opened up. So we're doing that. We'll go live at on WGTV on June 8th, and we'll be showing the show on there. I'm not sure what time yet, but yeah, got some good stuff going.
Awesome. Bullpen Professional Wrestling. People check it out. Support Bull and find it. You can find that on Facebook. Is there any other?
Yes, go to my Facebook page, Bull Buchanan, or you can go to Bullpen Professional Wrestling. I went on there today and, asked all my friends to go and like it and follow it. And we went from 395 at 9 o'clock this morning. I think we're way over 700 now. So, I'm still, like I said, I'm still learning this tech stuff, but I'm starting to figure it out. So,
We'll get there. I love it, man. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. It's great to hear someone who was just a huge fan, got to live this life and really enjoy this the way you did, and now your sons are in it, and that's what I mean. That's a dream. That's people. Not everybody gets to do that. You chased it, and I hope you can smell the roses and enjoy it, my friend.
Thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure being here.
All right. Thank you, Bull. Thank you for your time.